This lecture is about opinion mining and sentiment analysis, covering its motivation. In this lecture, we're going to start talking about mining a different kind of knowledge, namely knowledge about the observer, or humans that have generated the text data. In particular, we're going to talk about the opinion mining and sentiment analysis. As we discussed earlier, text data can be regarded as the data generated from humans as subjective sensors. In contrast, we have other devices such as video recorder that can report what's happening in the real world objectively to generate the video data, for example. Now, a main difference between text data and other data like video data is that it has rich opinions, and the content tends to be subjective because it's generated from humans. Now, this is actually a unique advantage of text data as compared with other data, because it offers a great opportunity to understand the observers. We can mine text data to understand the opinions, understand the people's preferences, how people think about something. So this lecture and the following lectures will be mainly about how we can mine and analyze opinions buried in a lot of text data. So let's start with the concept of opinion. It's not that easy to formally define opinion, but mostly we would define opinion as a subjective statement describing what a person believes or thinks about something. Now, I highlighted quite a few words here, and that's because it's worth thinking a little bit more about these words, and that would help us better understand what's in the opinion. And this further helps us to define the opinion more formally, which is always needed to computationally solve the problem of opinion mining. So let's first look at the keyword subjective here. Now, this is in contrast with objective statement or factual statement. Those statements can be proved right or wrong. And this is a key differentiating factor from opinion, which tends to be not easy to prove wrong or right because it reflects what a person thinks about something. So in contrast, objective statement can usually be proved wrong or correct. For example, you might say this computer has a screen and a battery. Now that's something you can check. It's either having a battery or not. But in contrast, if you think about the sentence such as this laptop has the best battery, or this laptop has a nice screen. Now these statements are more subjective, and it's very hard to prove whether it's wrong or correct. So opinion is a subjective statement. And next, let's look at the keyword person here, and that indicates there's an opinion holder. Because when we talk about opinion, it's about the opinion held by someone. And then we notice that there is something here, so that's the target of the opinion. The opinion is expressed on this something. And then, of course, beliefs or thinks implies that the opinion would depend on the culture or background and context in general, because a person might think differently in a different context. People from different background may also think in different ways. So this analysis shows that there are multiple elements that we need to include in order to characterize an opinion. So what's a basic opinion representation like? Well, it should include at least three elements, right? First, it has to specify what's the opinion holder. So whose opinion is this? Second, it must also specify the target. What's this opinion about? And third, of course, we want opinion content. And so what exactly is the opinion? If you can identify these, we get a basic understanding of opinion, and it can already be useful sometimes. If you want to understand further, we want to enrich the opinion representation. And that means we also want to understand, for example, the context of the opinion. So under what situation was the opinion expressed? For example, in what time was it expressed? We also would like to deeply understand the opinion sentiment, and this is to understand what the opinion tells us about the opinion holder's feeling. For example, is this opinion positive or negative? Or perhaps the opinion holder was happy or was sad? And so such an understanding obviously goes beyond just extracting the opinion content. It needs some analysis. So let's take a simple example of a product review. In this case, there's actually explicit opinion holder and explicit target. Right? So it's obviously what's the opinion holder, and that's just a reviewer. And it's also often very clear what's the opinion target, and that's the product being reviewed. For example, iPhone 6. And when the review was posted, usually you can extract such information easily. Now the content, of course, is the review text. That's in general also easy to obtain. So you can see product reviews are fairly easy to analyze in terms of obtaining a basic opinion representation. But of course, if we want to get more information, we might want to know the context. For example, the review was written in 2015. Or we want to know that the sentiment of this review is positive. And so this additional understanding, of course, adds value to mining the opinions. Now you can see in this case, the task is relatively easy, and that's because the opinion holder and the opinion target have already been identified. Now let's take a look at the sentence in the news. In this case, we have an implicit holder and implicit target, and the task is in general harder. So we can identify opinion holder here, and that's the governor of Connecticut. We can also identify the target. So one target is Hurricane Sandy, but there is also another target mentioned, which is a hurricane of 1938. So what's the opinion? Well, there's a negative sentiment here, and that's indicated by words like bad and worst. And we can also then identify the context, New England in this case. Now, unlike in the product review, all these elements must be extracted by using natural language processing techniques. So the task is much harder, and we need a deeper natural language processing. And these examples also suggest that a lot of work can be easily done for product reviews, and that's indeed what has happened. Analyzing sentiment in news is still quite difficult. It's more difficult than the analysis of opinions in product reviews. Now, there are also some other interesting variations. In fact, here we're going to examine the variations of opinions more systematically. First, let's think about the opinion holder. Now, the holder could be an individual or could be a group of people. And sometimes opinion was from a committee or from a whole country of people. Opinion target can also vary a lot. It can be about one entity, a particular person, a particular product, a particular policy, etc. But it could be about a group of products, could be about the products from a company in general. Could also be very specific about one attribute of the entity. For example, it's just about the battery of iPhone. It could be about someone else's opinion, and one person might comment on another person's opinion, etc. So you can see there's a lot of variation here that will cause the problem to vary a lot. Now, opinion content, of course, can also vary a lot. On the surface, you can identify one sentence opinion or one phrase opinion, but you can also have longer text to express the opinion, like a whole article. And furthermore, we can identify the variation in the sentiment or emotion dimension. That's about the feeling of the opinion holder. So we can distinguish positive versus negative or neutral, or happy versus sad, etc. Finally, the opinion context can also vary. We can have a simple context, like different time or different locations, but there could be also complex text, such as some background topic being discussed. So when an opinion is expressed in a particular discourse context, it has to be interpreted in different ways than when it's expressed in another context. So the context can be very rich to include the entire discourse context of an opinion. From computational perspective, we're most interested in what opinions can be extracted from text data. So it turns out that we can also distinguish different kinds of opinions in text data from computation perspective. First, the observer might make a comment about the opinion target in the observed world. So in this case, we have the author's opinion. For example, I don't like this phone at all, and that's the opinion of this author. In contrast, the text might also report opinions about others. So the person could also make an observation about another person's opinion and report this opinion. So for example, I believe he loves that painting. And that opinion is really about, is really expressed by another person here. So it doesn't mean this author loves that painting. So clearly the two kinds of opinions need to be analyzed in different ways. And sometimes in product reviews, you can see, although mostly the opinions are from this reviewer, sometimes the reviewer might mention opinions of his friend or her friend, right? And another complication is that there may be indirect opinions or inferred opinions that can be obtained by making inferences on what's expressed in the text that might not necessarily look like opinion. For example, one statement that might be, this phone ran out of battery in just 1 hour. Now, this is in a way a factual statement because it's either true or false, right? You can even verify that. But from this statement, one can also infer some negative opinions about the quality of the battery of this phone, or the feeling of the opinion holder about the battery. The opinion holder clearly wished the battery to last longer. So these are interesting variations that we need to pay attention to when we extract opinions. Also, for this reason, about the indirect opinions, it's often also very useful to extract whatever the person has said about the product. And sometimes factual sentences like these are also very useful. So from practical viewpoint, sometimes we don't necessarily extract the subjective sentences. Instead, we could just get all the sentences that are about opinions that are useful for understanding the person or understanding the product being commented on. So the task of opinion mining can be defined as taking text data as input to generate a set of opinion representations. In each representation, we should identify opinion holder, target, content, and context. Ideally, we can also infer opinion sentiment from the content and context to better understand the opinion. Now, often some elements of the representation are already known. I just gave a good example in the case of product reviews, where the opinion holder and opinion targeter are often explicitly identified. And that's not why this turns out to be one of the simplest opinion mining tasks. Now, it's interesting to think about the other tasks that might be also simple, because those are the cases where you can easily build applications by using opinion mining techniques. So now that we have talked about what is opinion mining and we have defined the task, let's also just talk a little bit about why opinion mining is very important and why it's very useful. So here I identified three major reasons, three broad reasons. The first is it can help decision support. It can help us optimize our decisions. We often look at the other people's opinions, look at the reader reviews in order to make a decision like buying a product or using a service. We also would be interested in others' opinions when we decide whom to vote, for example. And policymakers may also want to know people's opinions when designing a new policy. So that's one general kind of applications, and it's very broad, of course. The second application is to understand people, and this is also very important. For example, it can help understand people's preferences. And this could help us better serve people. For example, we can optimize a product search engine or optimize a recommender system if we know what people are interested in, what people think about products. It can also help with advertising, of course, and we can have targeted advertising if we know what kind of people tend to know like what kind of product. Now, the third kind of applications can be called a voluntary survey. Now, this is mostly to support research that used to be done by doing surveys, doing manual surveys, question answering. People need to fill in forms to answer some questions. Now, this is directly related to humans as sensors, and we can usually aggregate opinions from a lot of humans to kind of assess the general opinion. Now, this would be very useful for business intelligence, where product manufacturers want to know where their products have advantages over others. Right? What are the winning features of their product, or winning features of competitive products? Market research has to do with understanding consumers' opinions, and this is clearly very useful directly for that. Data-driven social science research can benefit from this because they can do text mining to understand the people's opinions. And if we can aggregate a lot of opinions from social media, from a lot of public information, then you can actually do some study of some questions. For example, we can study the behavior of people on social media or on social networks. And these can be regarded as a voluntary survey done by those people. In general, we can gain a lot of advantage in any prediction task because we can leverage the text data as extra data about any problem, and so we can use text-based prediction techniques to help you make prediction or improve the accuracy of prediction.